Yeah, with that, I'd like to introduce the next stream, which is about smart ports and automation. The first one is a panel moderated by Wootton. He is Deputy Director of Terminal and Automation at the Royal HaskoningDHV and has more than 2 decades of experience in the industry, focusing on terminal development, systems, and automation projects. And the topic that he will moderate is Global Port Operators Roundtable, Ports, AI, Automation, and Robotics Application Developments. Mark, over to you, please.
Thank you. Good day to everybody, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here and hosting this esteemed panel. And as the introduction said, we will discuss, again, I think, and we heard it from the previous session, one of the hot topics in the industry and probably in multiple industries around artificial intelligence. Also look at automation and robotics and how that's applied within our port businesses. And I guess with the time that we've got, I would say that these conferences dedicated to these subjects on their own. So I think we'll only be able to skim the surface. And what I would like to focus on is really some experiences from the panelists, what they've seen, how they've benefited from these types of solutions, technologies, and maybe some lessons learned from that as well. So I think some takeaways from some practical experience in implementing and utilizing some of these new technologies. But let me introduce the rest of the panels, and then we'll start the discussion. And then at the end, we've got about 10 minutes, which we should be able to keep for question and answer. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the session. So first of all, we have Jasmine Ang. She's the Digital Innovation Program Manager for Vopak in the Middle East and Asia. So she's focusing on the deployment and use of new technologies to digitize and automate operational processes within the company. Vopak is a Dutch-based tank storage company. It's been around for many, many years, and I'm sure been through many evolutions of developments and technologies and things in the industry. So it'll be good to hear the perspective and very focused on innovation, it looks like, as well. Next up, we have Marco Neelsen. He's the Chief Executive Officer for Tanjung Pelepas, which is the largest container terminal in Malaysia. So to get his perspective in a large operational terminal and where he sees benefits and utilization of these types of technology and automation, and potentially some takeaways and practical tips and hints from that. Carlos Rua. Carlos is also focused on innovation for the Port of Barcelona, but at the same time, I'm not sure how you juggle all of your hats. Has an academic career, focusing on lean supply chain management and logistics. So I guess good to get both a practical as well as an academic perspective on these trends in the industry and how we should be approaching them potentially in a more systematic way, I think, and how that looks like, sort of transitioning from academics into the real world. And then finally, we have Alex Duca. Alex is recently appointed as the Head of Automation Engineering at Maersk Head Office, and prior to that, I think for many years with the APM terminals, also heading up the automation group. So I would say somebody who's been around, been there, done that, still doing it, and also interesting to hear his practical takeaways from these, both, I would say, technologies that have been around and as well as some of the new ones that we see coming into the industry, and potentially also how that looks when you take it outside of just the port and terminal environment and now into this new role where you're looking at the broader perspective, broader portfolio of most business with vessel operations, logistics, and do you see sort of crossovers between all of those different pieces of the pie, so to speak. So maybe to kick off, I'll ask Jasmine, first of all, if you can maybe just from your perspective, talk to how you see both or in your organization inside Vopak, the take-up and sort of the deployment of technologies like artificial intelligence, what sort of areas you see benefiting the most from this, as well as from automation and robotics. I know it's a relatively broad question, but maybe you can just talk to your background and experience on these subjects. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So maybe I will just share what are the types of technologies related to automation and also AI within that Vopak innovation has been working on, and then maybe some of the key benefits and how what we've been doing in terms of scaling it within our organization, etc. So when it comes to in our terminals, we have several key assets, many of them being our tank assets, as our key infrastructure, where we need to constantly inspect, monitor, maintain constant visibility on their structural integrity. So for these tanks, we usually conduct visual inspections as well as NDT, such as UTG wall scanning to obtain wall thickness measurements, which are necessary parameters to understand the performance of the tanks, identify areas of corrosion, wall thinning rates, etc. So conventionally, these inspection activities require things like working at heights where scaffolding or rope access have to be used, and confined space entry for out of service in-tank inspection, putting the inspector inside very dangerous positions and environmental conditions to conduct necessary data capturing and photo capturing. So here, where possible, we try to use remote controlled robots to remove the man from these dangerous environments, where the man can now conduct these work safely on the ground and outside the tank for these in-tank inspections. Right, so this is where we deploy things such as our drones, inspection drones, that a project that we have worked together with Performance Rota, which is also a Vopak venture. Other benefits also include a more complete inspection, where continuous video footages now can be captured versus the conventional point image or point data capture. So this provides better location and visualization context, as well as a means for the terminal to verify the completeness of the inspection and identify any lapses from the inspector, right? So previously we give full trust to the inspector to identify all areas of concern. Yeah. Also, I just want to point out that the size of the drones that we use are also relatively small and nimble compared to our inspector. So they are usually also able to reach previously inaccessible areas within our tanks. Yeah, so these are some of the benefits that we have. And the use of drones for inspection is something that we are trying to get it through. We have done successful POCs. Right now, we are trying to implement it as part of our company's process to raise the standard of inspection. Yeah. And
in terms of things like artificial intelligence, so we've spoken maybe about robotics and some automation, but do you also have initiatives, projects, and some use cases, if you like, for deploying this inside of Vopak that you can share?
Sure. Okay, so I probably talk about two projects. So I think artificial intelligence is something still relatively nascent, and we still have to use a lot of training set to get the level of accuracy that we desire. Because, when it comes to our operations, we want to minimize lapses as much as possible. So so we have done the use of artificial intelligence through video analytics and image analytics for two use cases. One is the use to track and retrieve information from our truck loading activities. So through the use of AI video analytics, where safety use cases like your PPE and safety harness compliances can be monitored, and operational data such as your vehicular license plate number, as well as more customized operational data like lineup validation data, product loading arms, and which truck loading compartment number is being loaded, they are being captured. Yeah, so these information, we are still working on it to get better accuracy for that, but we see potential in helping us, right, extract data directly into our system, and then automating the whole process, cutting out the man, cutting out human errors from the process.
Right.
And this actually forms the, maybe I will add another point on automating our terminals, through the use of AI and complementing mechanical automation. So concurrently, we also have developed in-house in Vopak our own remote control truck loading arm for truck loading activities. Right, so this is where our loading arms have to be, previously conventionally, our loading arms have to be carried and positioned into manhole compartments, and then sometimes hurting our operators' back. But now these arms can be remotely controlled and adjusted to fit directly into the manhole. So not only this helps us protect our staff physically, the solution also helps us cut this activity down from a 2-man operation to a 1-man operation, and also reduce splash loading risk. So although this is not fully automated, but we believe that this remote control solution, coupled with our activity data captured from AI, can probably help set the stage for future automation.
Excellent. Okay, thanks very much for the insights as well. And Marco, I'll sort of move along to yourself now, and maybe from your perspective as the chief executive of a very large and obviously fully operational terminal, maybe you can share a little bit your experience in deploying some of these newer technologies like artificial intelligence, and trying to see, where those are benefiting or helping you to improve things like efficiency, productivity, reducing cost if that's possible, and also the challenges of deploying these in a fully operational terminal, and how you see this sort of progressing in the future.
All right, thanks, Mark, and good afternoon to everyone from the neighborhood here in Malaysia. I think, as you said, we are a large facility. We did last year over 11 million TU on one footprint. So whatever we do in changing something on the terminal, it's doing live operation. So it can be at times an open heart surgery, and because we can't stop operations 24/7. So when we talk about AI or automation, and what do we try to achieve? I think that there's 2 main goals as a container terminal we're looking at. One is definitely safety and security. We are, as in most countries, we are strategic assets, so security matters, but also, of course, at the same level, the safety of our employees and our colleagues is still a dangerous environment. So how can automation, AI help us to make the workplace safer? The other area we're looking at, obviously, is data. It's a data-driven business. It's the data exchange within the terminal. We have a large amount of assets. It's the data exchange with our customers, data exchange with authorities. So this is areas where we said we need to look at how can we make this all better and more seamless, and to get improvements. So on our case, to share where are we focusing on, which areas we're really looking at. I think that there's many, and I will just try to highlight a few. I think the big ones are within operations management, of course, doing the daily container operation. So our terminal operating system, our TOS, it's something which is quite important, which we constantly improve. One was that we, a few years ago, we did 8 million TU, now we are at 11 and growing. So we didn't have to change the software, we're enhancing the software, so we don't have to do another full rollout. We can use the system to improve productivity, to reduce waste. The other one is around, I think the big one is for us at the moment, which we implemented last year on the AI side, is asset digitization, where we created a real-time digital twin of our entire operational equipment, which capturing live location of equipment, and it controls the condition and the health of the equipment and the systems. So that means we're collecting a huge amount of data in a 3D augmented reality environment on live screens, and that helps our people, the operational people, as well as our technicians, to check the operation, to improve the operation, to see what's really going on, because at the moment most of our equipment is still driven manually by operators. We can see things before they happen. So as well as we catching data through AI, through IoT sensors, which helping especially the technical people to see when there is issues with equipment. So, and what we try to achieve, I mentioned at the beginning, data is important. What we try to achieve is that we start capturing data to the point that we are moving away from the current preventive maintenance, that we start moving into predictive maintenance, that the data will help us to predict when we need to exchange spare parts or when we need to change something. So that means that we want to come eventually to a zero breakdown environment, so that maintenance will happen and most cost efficient at the time when it really is necessary, based on real data, and not based on when the manufacturer thinks we should do something or when it's already too late. So therefore, in our TOS environment, that operations management, that's a huge area we're looking at. Obviously, like a lot of companies, business management, so I will not touch much on it, but ERP system, we just rolled out a complete new ERP system. It's very comprehensive, it's on a single platform, it talks to each other, interchangeable. I think a lot of companies doing it, and therefore I don't want to touch so much on it. I think the other one I mentioned is safety and security, and there is a few areas which we did, smart apps, where we're optimizing safety control and manpower within the operation. And I will give you just two examples, which it's very simple, but technology helped us to reduce a big risk factor. And that's, for example, that we developed in-house a kind of we call it pinning app, which is very simple, where we, when trucks arrive with containers to the ship, in the old days, the container goes under the crane and then people have to put twist locks on or not. Now we have decided to move all of these events outside the cranes, so there is no risk of falling objects, no risk of accidents, or at least a large reduced risk of accidents. And people have an iPad or smart pad, and then actually the system will tell them up front when the containers arrive, because they arrive for several cranes at the same point, do you need a twist lock or not? If not, traffic light is green. If yes, traffic light is red, people put a twist lock on. So that means we have hardly to none people under the crane. So, and statistics have shown in the past that a lot of accidents, also deadly accidents, happens under the cranes around the busy operation. So, and moving that risk away from the cranes, it's a large improvement. It's relatively small, but I think it's not always about that. It has to be massive technology. It's about that even small technology can have a massive impact. So I think that's just 2-3 examples. Other one maybe quickly around sustainability and environment. And what we do is we're upgrading our SCADA system on the terminal, so that we're much better able to monitor and process real-time data for everything related to our facility. And what I mean here is that we start to connect things like fire alarms, sewage treatment plants, fresh water, wastewater. So when accidents happen, especially I mentioned sewage and so on, this can be big environmental issues, so that we through a proper SCADA system can react very, very quickly in case of incidents and accidents. So we will know immediately when things happen, and people don't have to go physically out and close a valve or do something. On the fingertip of an iPhone or iPad, 2 o'clock in the morning at home, the duty facility manager can do already a first response, and therefore definitely can be able to stop any or reduce any incident or any disaster and so on. So from an environmental point, this is something where we also put quite a lot of efforts in, fire protection and so on. It should be underestimated. Ports are still a large asset. We have a lot of dangerous cargo in ports, also in the container. So this matters a lot, and environmental incidents, when they happen rare, but when they happen in ports, they can be very quickly very large. So this is something we really using technology to be very fast. You asked on the benefits quickly. I think the 2-3 big ones is that we increase much more our data amount and data accuracy. So that's for us super important. I mentioned predictive maintenance. So we want to make decisions based on data, and therefore we need to collect data, and we need to collect the right data at the right spot. So that's for us super important. And of course, we are able to perform simple tasks, repetitive tasks, much easier and much fewer errors. I think the pinning was an example. And at the same time, we increase the employee productivity. Coming back to the pinning app, we need now only 1 or 2 stations per ship with 6 cranes. Before we needed 6 crews of people pinning containers. Now we need only 1 or 2 crews for the same amount. So that's also where the productivity going up. I think, yeah, for the moment, that's probably the main areas we are looking and we are working at the moment.
Thanks. That's very good insight as well. Thanks, Marco. Carlos, maybe if I can pass it over to you and get your perspective, I think both from an academic point of view and then maybe as a sort of port authority, I guess that's the sort of main job that you have, focusing on innovation. And then how you see it, let's say, in the different environments, this maybe the theoretical approach versus the practical approach and what the Port Authority is doing. And what do you see the terminal operators doing within the Port of Barcelona, and where you see some successes and some gaps maybe in terms of how they're deploying things like artificial intelligence and automation. So if I can get your thoughts on that, please.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Yeah, the perspective from the Port Authority is a little bit different than from a terminal operator, no? Because we are not directly managing terminals, we are not managing the cranes and so on, no? So our role is a little bit different. We are very proud that in Barcelona we have one of the few semi-automatic terminals in the world. It's best Barcelona Europe South Terminal from Hutchinson. And all the internal movements in these terminals are robotized. That means that there are no human factor intervening in all the process, no? But this is something that affects especially the terminal, and it gives high productivity for them. In terms of the Port Authority, on what Port Authority have to do, I think that the role of a Port Authority is to facilitate the integration of all the information among the different agents, and to be sure that the information, the right information, arrives to the right people at the right moment. Okay, that means to facilitate the development of real-time data for the users of the port, no? And that means that when you talk about artificial intelligence and so on, this is a very powerful way of getting the right data at the right moment. And I will put some examples that we are working on in the Port of Barcelona. One of the technologies in which we believe is Jasmine has said, is the combination of image recognition and artificial intelligence. At this moment, we have in the port more than 200 cameras, no? And in the next 2 years, we will double that number, because it's a very powerful development to have. There is a phrase that says an image is better than 1,000 words, no? And that's really true. Because at the end, a camera or a video camera is something very versatile. You can do it for identifying trucks, for identifying containers, for identifying risk situation, dangerous goods, everything. Just with one camera, you can do everything, no? And if you put, for example, this is one pilot we are developing now, you can put a camera in front of a cruise terminal, and you can try to identify what the people do, the behavior of the cruise passengers. That means that you will know that, for example, in this kind of cruises, or the people, 60% of the people will use a taxi to arrive to the terminal, 30% of the people will go walking, and so on. And that gives you an idea of how to manage the mobility around the port. That can be extended also to ferry terminals. In terms of cargo, more or less it happens the same. We have a lot of information from our terminals, because all of them are automatic gates, no, and virtual gates. That means that all the process in the gates are automatized, like you have said before, no. That means the truck arrives and there is no intervention with nobody, no. You can read the placard, you can read the number of the container. The truck driver has received a PIN code in their mobile, and if everything is okay, then you can the truck can enter, and it's sent to the right line to get the container, or to leave the container, no? So that works, but in some cases we lose part of the information, because that works quite well in the terminal, but also we have developed in the entrance of the port. Not only in the entrance of the terminal. That means that we know the waiting time of the container or the truck driver, and this kind of information. And one of our new developments using this combination of artificial intelligence and image recognition is to identify moving elements, not in the gate of the terminal, that it's how to say, not easy, but it's quite usual, no? Because the truck is stopped, but to identify, as an example, in a train. So at this moment, we have made some pilots trying to identify what a moving train is bringing to the port before arriving to the terminal. So the train is moving, and we get just with a camera the information of all the map of the train. That means the number of the wagon and the container placed on every wagon. That's a very useful information because the map of the train is something that sometimes is not in the hands of the terminal operator, or is not in the hands of the port authority, but sometimes it's very useful because clients are every time more demanding, no? And you can imagine that some of the big clients of the port, like Zara, I mean Inditex or IKEA or the big retailers, has some just-in-time requirements from the logistic chain. And they know when the train arrives to an inland terminal, as an example, but they want, no, my container has to be discharged the first one because I have a truck waiting and the warehouse is waiting for the cargo. If you don't know exactly where is the container on the train or where is the cargo exactly, that gives you, you need some time to react. And giving this information, you are able to go quickly and to respond to the needs of the clients. And also you can answer a question that is the key question in all the logistic chain: where is my container? No? That everybody wants to know, and sometimes you can answer, sometimes it's more difficult to give you that answer. No? Related to other robotics or other elements, for example, in the case of drones, we have some problems because, and we are not very successful in that way. We are using drones, but the problem is that the port of Barcelona is very near to the airport. It's in the entrance cont of the airport, and then give us a lot of problems for using drones in a regular basis. We can fly them, but with a special permits and so on. So we have not used in a regular basis in the port just for that reason. But I think it's also a very powerful tool for inspections, for surveying, for analyzing the security, the safety and security and the port and so on. And we will try to push more in that way. The last thing that I think that we have to develop is also with the use of cameras, is the precision reading of information. And at this moment, I'm talking about the seals of the container. This is the last gap we have in all the information related to the container, to the arrival, to the entrance, and so on. The number of the seal that the container does, because it's a very small piece of plastic or something like that. And we are now trying to use this is a pilot, so we have not get results important yet. But if it works, it will give a complete automation of all the entrance process in a terminal. If you are able to use cameras with zoom in order to be able to focus and read the seals of the container just when arriving to our terminals. And more or less, that's all. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Carlos. So last but definitely not least, Alex, maybe some thoughts from many years in deploying, I think, things like automation, maybe more recently, although I'm sure it's been around in different forms and naming conventions like artificial intelligence and robotics. So, and also your sort of maybe more recent experience in your new role and looking at a broader sort of types of operation and how you transition, or what do you see different between what happens in the ports, what's happening in the vessel operations and sort of liner services and logistics, and how you kind of merge these all together and look at a roadmap for Maersk overall for these type of solutions.
Yes, thank you, Mark. So first of all, when we talk about automation, artificial intelligence, we need to talk about the transformation and modernization of our operations. It is fundamental on how we have defined and we're defining these efforts in support of our overall company strategy of becoming safer, better, and bigger. It's very important, as also Marco mentioned, the safety component is basically our commitment of protecting our people from harm. You know, while we are trying and we creating a safety culture where leaders and frontline, they are deeply involved into understanding, you know, how the work needs to be done and how risks are evaluated. But at the same time, also de-risking operation through design, through technical and technological designs, which will actually remove risks from the operation. The better for us means that APM Terminals, you know, continues to build on the way of it serves its customers. Here we are focusing on improving the financial performance. We are implementing our way of working, which it's playing a key role in you know, creating the machine of continuous improvement for all aspects of our operations. Also here, a key element is our change in our step change into the approach towards terminal automation, where better asset management, additional technology and digital enabled solutions for our customers play a very important role. Finally, bigger is basically our license to grow and grow our business again, but growing it into a sustainable and safer way. And here we can mention our efforts which on decarbonizing the transport and logistics, where we are playing a driving role in creating really a major change. From the group perspective, of course, now starting in my new role, everything in this way, it's widening a little bit into the matter of how you actually serve end-to-end processes and how you interact with our customers from a pure transport and logistic service point of view. So technologically, we are trying to create and we are establishing now a platform, an IoT and automation platform, which will support all our businesses. And the three main, let's say, focus areas, you know, to improve and to create such a platform is, first of all, we need to have connected assets. We need to look to increase our, you know, connectivity within each assets, within each facilities, but also the facilities in between themselves. Then we will have to, we focus on digitizing the assets, collecting data, and making this data available for visualization and improvement of operational processes. And last but not least, we deploy automation, we deploy technology to further improve the operational processes and also create new ways of optimizing those processes. So technology-wise, I would say that definitely AI, it is very much in the attention of everyone now. I would say that we are really working intensively with partners within the industry and also with other industry. We are also investing in startup organizations which can help us really creating a step change into the way of how we can deploy technology. And my observation so far is that while everybody looks for that, you know, big algorithm which will solve very complex operational challenges, I think the key to success would be in creating smaller assignments, smaller tasks, which can be then served with simpler solutions, AI solutions, but at the same time creating an environment where our organizations can learn not only how to deploy such algorithms, but also how to utilize the algorithms into the day-to-day operations, how to use the information provided in taking better decision, data-driven decision, which will actually help us move through a more modernized operational environment. And last but not least, I would say we all need to look from a supply chain management perspective. We need to understand the challenges which we are facing today in the industry, and to at the same time understand that that will be many actors and many players into this supply chain, which needs to be engaged in order to optimize the overall performance at the global level. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Maybe I'll go back to Jasmine again. So I think you've spoken a little bit about what your experience and what you've done as an organization, but maybe looking sort of outside and a little bit ahead, where do you see, or what do you see coming down the line in terms of new innovations, new types of solutions or technologies, and which areas you would be sort of focusing on for your next set of projects or next innovations, if I could ask that?
So I think we all, like, you know, it's a common theme within this entire conference that we focus on data. So data is really the base infrastructure that we're going to build on new technologies. So previously I spoke more about terminal level kind of data, you know, as what Mr. Duca mentioned. So Vopak, within Vopak, we also look at data at an industry level, right? So within the Vopak network, we've been constantly trying to strengthen our digital capabilities, focus not only on internal digitization across various tracks of our business, but now we are also ready to connect to our supply chain partners more efficiently. We know the importance of sharing data, right? The question is how. So instead of working with like multiple players, for Vopak, we work with Nextport, who is our data connectivity partner. He will then help us integrate with multiple players through a single connection on their platform. So the Nextport platform is interoperable with other solutions, so it can help us serve our customers and logistic partners more efficiently without too much hassle, right? So this way, we not only can connect with players more rapidly compared to those that are creating connections with partners individually, but we also can be able to extend our outreach a lot further and faster. Yeah, so Nextport is a mature data sharing platform for multiple port communities. So it's a party that we think is good to work with us. Yeah. So currently for Vopak, we have already shared our vessel arrival and departure data and are working on other applications to share more data.
Thanks, Leah. Good. Marco, if I can just move across to you. And I heard you mention it, and I also heard Alex mention sort of sustainability and environment. And I guess at the back, everybody's working towards net zero at some point in the future, or sooner, hopefully rather than later. Do you see some of these technologies like automation and artificial intelligence helping to make that transition or enabling it to some extent to make it easier, or in some way facilitating it? So how do we kind of combine with the other improvement areas, benefits that you mentioned, safety, efficiency, but also now maybe looking at it from a sustainability point of view?
No, absolutely. I think besides the safety part, which I mentioned, sustainability comes more and more on the agenda. And I think it's also important, and not only for the ports industry, I think also for other industries, it is not only driven by governments as such. So we are equally, if not more, driven by customers. In our case, the shipping lines, which are saying, look, we need to get, we have our goals to our customers, and we're part of our supply chain. So I think the two questions is, number one, they said, so you need to get carbon neutral, and after carbon neutral, you need to get net zero over a certain time frame, and they need to be ambitious, but still realistically. And I think the second point is then also prove to us, right? I mean, it's not about to buy yourself out, but also be able to prove that you really achieved it through, and that's where big data, I think, comes into the game, where sensors comes into the game to say we are able to prove that and we have less emissions, or we have technologies where we can measure the data, where we can show the data, where we can prove also that we have certain milestones or KPIs on the journey so that we can prove we are on track for moving forward, right? So I think, as I mentioned on the facility side, and SCADA was one example, which has quite a lot to do. It can help a lot to make the facility more sustainable. We talk about coil ironing, so that ships can switch off the engines while they're in the port. That's something it's much more than put a plug in. I think that last year before COVID have shown in the cruise industry that it is everything but easy to do it and to put it into the environment. And that's again where we need definitely certain angle of automation, or not automation, probably more of AI to get it integrated, especially in a large port, right, where you have up to 14 ships at the same time alongside, and everybody wants to use it. So there is definitely certain areas we need to look at, and we will use automation. But let me just, I think, if we go one step back, and I think that is maybe a point I would like to make, and that's maybe a pain point or 2 pain points, which maybe everybody, authority level, but also we on operational level, MC and Carlos mentioned it a little bit. I think on the one hand, yes, we want to use all these things. Carlos mentioned drones. But for example, the legislation around using drones is not yet clear. So on the one hand, the port is a very secure area, then we want to use drones, but at the same moment, then other enforcement units saying you can't use drones for various security reasons. So I think there's a lot of ambiguity where we want to use certain technology and are able to use this technology, but legislation really does not allow us to make it happen. So and then the same thing could happen also for all other technology. So that's an area which we're discussing here, obviously on national level, but I think it's much bigger, and that's why I'm also looking towards the port authorities and IAPH and so on, that these go a little bit in and say we need to talk about what legislative changes we need to do. And the second one is, when we want to achieve the sustainability goals in entire shipping, including the shipping lines and everywhere else, we need to have also the right talents, the right technical and talents from the universities, which are also ready to join our industry. I mean, and I think my friends and colleagues in Singapore, from the Singapore Port Authority and from PSA and so on, they have the same problems as we have, and DP World and everybody else in the market and shipping lines, getting the right people, the right talents in to work in this industry. So if we have to compete with Google or Alphabet or Meta or whatever for young and ambitious IT engineers or people with a degree in gaming development, and that's probably this knowledge we need in the future, we are just not a sexy industry. So I think this is also, we as an entire industry need to start getting our head around when we want to achieve sustainability, and that's the end goal. The goal is not automation and AI. This is just a support tool to come to our real goal, and the real goal is having an emission-free and hopefully still global supply chain, and we not break up the national and regional, and with all the things going on. We need to have the talents who are supporting us. So we are not as sexy as Tesla. We're probably everybody queuing up to be part of Elon Musk's storyboard. Ports and shipping lines are not that sexy. So how do we, I think it's an interesting question, how do we get there? How do we get these talents in helping us to make all these things happen? Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Maybe, Carlos, it's a good cue up for you as a part-time academic and somebody who's involved in training people. Where do you see the sort of talent gap, and how do we address that? If you can do it in a 1-minute sort of summary, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I will be very quick here. Around the talent gap, it's really true that the new technologies will create new challenges for people, for the human factor in ports as well as in other parts of the logistic chain. In our port, we have realized that we have made an analysis about the existing training programs and the needs of the port just now, and there is a gap now. So in the future, it will be a bigger gap in that way, because it's very difficult to adapt the programs, to adapt the studies, to adapt the university programs and so on. And things in the real world are happening more quickly. So you have to speed up the the development of training programs for the logistic industry and for the port industry. And you have to take into account that in the future, I can imagine that the professions will be very, very different that we are thinking now. No, I imagine, for example, and this is something we discussed in the port a few days ago, the work of a pilot of the port. No, I mean, if you have probably in 5 or 10 years an hologram of the pilot that you can show in the vessel or something like that, it's not far away from the technological point of view. It's something that can be real in few years. No, when you start arriving start arriving automatic trucks to the port, autonomous trucks, and what will you do in the door of the port? So the problem is not only the automatization, it's how all the industry reacts to this automatization, to this robotization of the industry. Because one problem is the autonomous truck, but the other problem is that people that receive the autonomous truck, what has to do with something that has nobody to talk with, no? I can imagine arriving to the terminal, and if some document is missing or something or not, what to do at that moment, no? So all the logistic chain has to adapt to the new developments, and it has to do quick, because if not, things will start to happen, and nobody will have the answer.
Thanks, Carlos. Maybe just last word, excuse me, from Alex, if you don't mind. And there was a question about cybersecurity. I know it's a general topic and something obviously that everybody is focused on and dealing with, I mean, on a day-to-day basis. So maybe not necessarily a topic for this discussion. But if you could also maybe just summarize, what do you think we should continue to do, or what we should change and stop doing to help us with the further deployment and realization of benefits from some of these technologies? So in a sort of short summary, if you don't mind.
Yes. So first of all, I will say that we are living very exciting times, and 2022 is really an important year for our industry. If we look from sustainability, from the environment, ESG initiatives which we are having right now, I need to mention here the Power to X technology which we are investing into, and a technology which is focusing on using green energy to create new green fuels, which will actually help to decarbonize the transport and logistic overall. At the same time, we have initiatives we call the machine to anything initiatives, which will be across different business sectors, basically improving our capability of integrating machine to machine. So here, the ability of machines to work in a mixed environment, both automated and manual machine in the same place. At the same time, how we improve the ability of machines being integrated in process, as Charles was mentioning, how an automated machine or a semi-automated machine would be integrated in such processes. And then, of course, how we actually integrate those machines in the existing infrastructure. This is, again, a very, very big challenge for all of us. But looking forward, I think the investments in technology and in optimization, modernization of our car operation will give significant results. We need to focus on how we're transforming our processes, how we're transforming our workforce, how we bring in skills and capabilities into our industry. And I can see that the type of skilled people, engineers and operators, which we are joining now, will be very much more oriented toward digital, very much oriented towards technology and usage of data. So overall, I think our industry will become much more digital enabled and data driven, interconnected into a cloud space environment. So yeah, exciting times in front of us.
Great. So that's a good positive note end on. So I think thanks very much to all the panelists. It was good discussion. And maybe just to sort of summarize a little bit, I think the technology is to a large extent already out there. It's really a question of how we deploy it, how do we find the people, the skills to be able to implement these solutions and to support them and to get the benefits from them. So I think this is going to be a challenge for us moving forward, that we, as you said, attract the people, the smart people into our industry, so we can continue to grow and to innovate. So thanks again, and maybe back to the organizer class.
Great, thank you very much, Mark, and to the panel. It strikes me that there are fewer ports than there are vessels. So in theory, it should be easier to do innovation and all the topics that we talked about for, a handful of large ports than for, one vessel at a time kind of thing. That's kind of one just thought. The other is that I think, a lot of the technologies, like we heard a lot about AI, machine learning, computer vision. I think we really see that these are almost generic technologies that can be used for so many different. In shipping, we use cameras and computer vision to detect whether people are in violation of PPE compliance, whether they have a helmet on or not. In drones, we use it for sort of optimizing the landing on vessels using computer vision. So that's something that I think is interesting in the sense that, again, we can probably learn from other industries to apply methods perhaps that have been used in one industry to the other. And then the one question that came up about cybersecurity, actually, I must admit, I asked that question anonymously. What strikes me there is that we have heard a lot about, obviously, cybersecurity has been a big topic outside maritime and shipping. It's just recently, over the last couple of years, and our accelerator EPS was active in that field with companies like CyberAll, that people are focusing on cybersecurity risks and monitoring mitigation for the vessels because of OT and IT are starting to get connected, and vessels themselves are connected. Again, this is kind of, okay, if something happens for one vessel or for even a fleet, it's kind of by definition the risk is somewhat limited. Because ports are such a bottleneck and aggregation point, we've seen that with Suez Canal, I think ports are even bigger. It strikes me that potentially it's an even bigger risk, and I think that's perhaps something that I haven't heard people talking much about in terms of the risk mitigation, both through technology, but also through insurance. My feeling is that insurance for cyber risks is kind of woefully underdeveloped, partly because there probably isn't enough information from an actual point of view. So those are just some thoughts.